All right. Welcome today to Inspired Instructions, providing meaningful instructional feedback and crucial conversations for school leaders. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to get started. Okay, so today when we're talking about providing instructional feedback and crucial conversation for school leaders, I really want to start out with giving you an opportunity to understand some of the other things, such as communication, accountability, and how we cultivate feedback and conversations within our schools. So as I mentioned, today we are going to first talk a little bit about what research says about providing meaningful feedback to teachers, as well as how do we create change in teacher behavior, a culture of reflection, accountability, and tips for communication. So let's start with some three prominent researchers, which you may have heard of when it comes to providing feedback. Why is that so incredibly important? So some of you may know John Hattie's research through visible learning. John Hattie did a meta-analysis that highlights the significant impact on teachers when they receive feedback about their teaching practices. Now, from a reference standpoint in this meta-analysis, if you consider 0.40, which is an effect size, that represents an average year of growth for students. And John Hattie measured all different types of interventions to see how those interventions actually impacted student growth. One of the things that he learned through this meta-analysis is that the feedback to teachers is having an effect size of 0.70, which is an incredibly powerful factor in the way of improving teacher effectiveness and student achievement. It underscored the importance of leaders creating systems where teachers can receive regular, high-quality feedback that allows them to refine their classroom techniques and maximize the impact on student achievement. Charlotte Danielson, well-known researcher, she emphasized the importance of teacher feedback and critical conversations as essential for professional growth. Danielson's research showed that feedback should be specific, evidence-based, and focused on observable practices that fosters reflection. And oftentimes, we may provide more subjective type of feedback to teachers, and so we want to highlight the observable practices that is critically important. Having conversations with teachers when approached about their practices should be done, of course, always with respect and some trust, and that will drive meaningful change. And then we will see an increase of students participating and achieving in schools. Grant Wiggins, our next researcher, he emphasized that instructional feedback should be actionable and geared towards improvement rather than evaluative. And so his insights, particularly through his work on formative assessment and feedback, notes that when delivered effectively, feedback is an indispensable tool for teacher development. So all three of those very famous researchers come up with basically the same type of thoughts when it comes to why crucial conversations matter. So when we provide specific, timely, actionable feedback to teachers about their classroom practices, it ultimately will lead to stronger student performance. The question becomes, how do we change teacher behavior? I know that in my work, not only as a school leader, but also in my work through Inspired Instruction, I speak to a lot of people, to leaders who will say, how do I get teachers to change? This video is going to highlight some thoughts about how do we get people to change? How do we start leading them in a way that will encourage them to take risk and change behaviors?
Psychologists know that there are two systems in our brains, the rational system and the emotional system. Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist at NYU, came up with a great analogy for these two systems. He said, think of your brain as a human rider atop an elephant. The rider represents the rational system. That's the part of us that plans and problem solves. The rider might do some analyzing and decide, hey, I want to go that way. But it's the elephant, representing the emotional system, that provides the power for the journey. The rider can try to lead the elephant or drag the elephant, but if these two ever disagree, who would you bet on? The elephant has a 6-ton weight advantage, and it's exactly that power imbalance that makes adopting new behaviors very hard. If you want this duo to head a new direction, you also need to think about the path, which represents the external environment. This duo is more likely to complete a journey if you can shorten the distance and remove any obstacles in their way. So bottom line, if you want to lead change, you've got to do 3 things. Give direction to the rider, knowledge of how to get to the destination. You've got to motivate the elephant, which means tapping into emotion. And finally, you need to shape the path to allow for easy progress. That's how change happens.
Okay. So using that video as a kickoff, I want to talk a little bit about directing the teacher. And one of the things that we tend to do when we evaluate teachers or we're trying to provide feedback is that it often can be that we go to what's not working. And so I would encourage you to look at the bright spots. So when you go into a classroom or when you're working with teachers, find bright spots. Talk with them about where they feel they are succeeding now and maybe where they've succeeded before, and encouraging things that are positive. Even if a teacher may need to make some changes within their rooms, being able to highlight things that are going well starts off your conversation, in a positive direction. So you can even say, hey, I noticed that you are doing more, small group instruction, and kids really seem like they are enjoying that. They have undivided attention. Starting with those types of comments really focuses your conversations in a positive direction. You also want to make sure that you are pointing to where you want them to go. And that can often be difficult because teachers or when you're making change, you want them to be able to have concrete and specific information. So think ahead of time about where do you want to see the teacher be moving towards, and providing them with a detailed description of that destination is important. Now, when you motivate people, tapping into their passion and the feeling is critically important. People may not remember the words that you're saying to them, but they will remember how you've made them feel. So creating that feeling of shared positiveness, that you are there to support rather than to judge or be evaluative, is crucial and able to motivate people to make those changes, which may be hard for them. So make the need for change visible, whether it's you're creating reminders of why we teach or what we're doing, with pictures of students into the hallways, or young children solving problems, putting a student product up where people see the work of students. Those are reminders to teachers of why we're creating these changes. And also shrink the change. How long does it take for you to provide feedback to your teachers after you've done an evaluation or you've observed a lesson? So that is also something that can be very difficult, as administrators and instructional coaches often have so many different things on their plates. But when you are evaluating someone or providing feedback, that immediate feedback does give them some sense of how they're doing. So shrink how long that feedback takes, and celebrate things along the way. So beyond the feedback that you want to give them, make sure that, again, you're always creating something very positive out of it. And then grow your people. From a school community standpoint, this is a message that you want to have as a school leader of growth mindset. We are always growing. We are always looking to see how we can move the line for students and student achievement. And it's a shared goal. It's not one person who's creating change. It is the entire school community. Shaping the path. So what's one thing that you can do as an instructional leader to eliminate obstacles? Is it that people need more time? Is it that they are struggling with how to look at data? How can you, as an instructional leader, shape the path to make it easier for them to get them to where you want them to be? And so take a look at your environment and think about what it is that you might be able to do. Get feedback from your teachers of how you can shape that path and become a champion for them and student achievement. Building habits, consider building a new habit into an old habit. If you have folks who may be more resistant, maybe tweaking some of that old habit, helping them come up with ideas of how to move in that right direction is another way that you can shape your path. And again, make sure that you are rallying your herd. That means that student growth, student achievement, and instructional feedback is one large goal for your entire school community. It's not specific to one teacher. You want everyone to feel like this is the way that we're moving and that we are moving in the direction of helping all students. Now, when it comes to teacher feedback, one of the things that's really important is a culture of reflection, self-reflection in particular. So as we are thinking as educators, self-reflection is very much a powerful tool, and leaders can engage their staff in this by using regular, structured self-reflection, not only for the teachers, but for themselves. If as a leader, you model self-reflection and are providing teachers with opportunities to hear your thoughts about how you can improve and how you would like to lead the school change, this allows them to model you and provides for opportunities for their growth. You can also celebrate their successes and adapt your methods to meet the ever-needing changes of your student population. So some tips to start. How to get your teachers to be self-reflecting. So invite your teachers to reflect on their own practices and students regularly. Make this a norm for your building, as I mentioned. Make time for this in different and fun ways to support a culture of improvement. Maybe consider taking your first 5 to 10 minutes of a faculty meeting and celebrating things that you see within your building or classrooms and celebrate that. Maybe giving them an opportunity to talk to one another about things that went really positively. Those are ways in which you can start having people self-reflect upon things that are going well and begin to share a bond with one another to support one another. As I mentioned, reflection is a skill that's best fostered through peer support. So providing that opportunity, maybe through PLCs, where people can open up about things that have gone well, maybe things that they want to change within their classrooms, is a great way to also encourage it. And pose questions that encourage your colleagues to ask questions of themselves and generate solutions to these questions. When it comes to instructional feedback and also conversations to assist teachers in changing and always improving their ways of student achievement, accountability comes into play. And so as leaders, we want to make sure that we give power to our teachers to own their teaching practices and help them become self-reflective and accountable. So by asking questions, delivering feedback, and clarifying their commitments, we're in a continuous loop where this is important and also very helpful. This is a short video that I love, and it is a school that we're going to take a look at that has infused actually a lot of the strategies that John Hattie Charlotte Danielson and Grant Wiggins supported. And so I thought this would be a great way to actually show you how this school in particular implemented the instructional feedback and conversations to move their school in a positive direction.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College is a 6th through 12th grade school. And right now we have 1,280 students. 7 years ago, we had 1,041 students. So I attribute our increased student population to strong teachers, systems, and structure, and that we're providing our teachers the tools that they need to ensure that our students are successful. One thing that I find unique about Denver Public Schools is the investment in growing teachers into leaders. As a principal in Wichita, Kansas, we didn't have a system for observations. And I can recall going into a teacher's classroom and sitting and taking copious notes on everything that I saw. And then I would meet with the teacher and go over all of those notes. And what was I getting better? Nothing, right? Because a teacher can improve 1,000 things at one time. We're here at MLK, we have a system for that. And we make sure that we give the teacher the highest leverage action step, one at a time, every week. So in essence, we're getting them better faster.
The goal of the weekly observations is to best help teachers move kids. So it's more than just, let's make sure that your classroom is in order and like managed well, but we want to make sure that we're choosing action steps that are going to make a lesson go from good to great, or take a lesson that wasn't great and then help a teacher script a lesson that is.
It's going to be part of your action step today.
Our feedback conversations last anywhere between 35 minutes and 45 minutes. They start with just providing that praise to the teacher, and we go directly into what we want the teacher to identify as their gap that was happening in the classroom. We provide the teacher with an exemplar model, whether that is the administrator or the senior team lead jumping up and being in full role play modeling, or showing an exemplar teacher teaching. And we ask the teacher to identify the gap between the exemplar and what was actually occurring in their classroom. And then from there, it kind of guides us into your action step for this week is, and we identify the what and the how. And then we ask the teacher, where can we incorporate this in your lesson plan for next week? The teacher opens up their laptop, we identify the area, and we give the teacher actually time during that feedback to adjust their lesson plan. Then we'll ask the teacher to jump up and get into full role play and practice. Sometimes that's uncomfortable for teachers to be in a full role play and practice, but teachers soon realize practice with us so that you can practice perfect with the students. I believe the observations and feedback has made impact with growing and developing, keeping and retaining our effective and distinguished teachers.
So whenever you see
I think I would be failing my students if I didn't have feedback sessions, honestly. I had a lot of the elements as a first year teacher that like I was supposed to have, but it wasn't necessarily as extensive as it needed to be before coaching. Like I remember my first coaching session, I was like, wow, like I'm doing all of this, but I'm not doing it like to the extent, full extent that I could be doing to like support all of my students. And now I feel like I'm more aware of a lot of things that I could be improving on because of coaching.
all right, girl, sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Let me know how it goes. Shoot me a text.
When teachers email you or text you and they're like, I did it. I feel much better about this lesson today. Like that small little change just made like all the difference with the rest of my classes.
Our intentionality around.
We do have a LEAP evaluation system at Denver Public Schools, and that's the teacher's formal observation. And we don't want the formal observation to be a gotcha. And so prior to those formal observations, we're in their classroom, coaching them, giving them those action steps, and preparing them to have a much higher score on their evaluation. As an administrator, I want to be able to go to bed at night and know that I've done everything that I need to do to develop my teachers.
Yeah.
I want to know that we've coached them and that we've provided them with unlimited opportunities to grow.
Okay, I love that video. The reason I like that video so much is because it really shows a way in which, as instructional leaders, we can provide feedback to teachers in a very meaningful way, and also give teachers an opportunity to look at what they have done within their classrooms and tweak it. And certainly when a lesson goes really well, I think for all of us who have been teachers within a school, we love when things go well. And so having that actionable feedback from that school where they're giving that time for them to tweak those lessons is something that all of us can be doing. So here are some leadership action steps that you should be thinking about that might be very helpful. So provide feedback to teachers within a short period of time after your observation. It can get very hectic as a school administrator, where you might be doing rounds of observations and evaluations. And the actual write-up of it can be very daunting. But consider even taking like a Post-it note and writing a comment, a positive comment, as you're leaving the classroom if it's super busy, that you give them something to let them know that the lesson that you saw that you really liked. Find a bright spot. That is immediate. They're going to see that Post-it note as soon as they're done and they have a moment. If you're able to, talk with them very briefly about their lesson and provide them some quick feedback as they potentially could be going into another class, that's just another way. But it does give them an opportunity to hear something from you, and then you can write up a full evaluation and provide more actionable feedback in a longer session once you are able to schedule the time. So mentioning again, provide praise on what went well. Find something that is a bright spot that boosts their confidence, but also ask the teacher to identify the gap. Maybe a question like, what did you think about your lesson? Or is there something that maybe if you were to redo it that you would want to make a change to? Giving those questions are an opportunity for them to self-reflect. You could even point out something that maybe, I noticed that a student was having difficulty. How might you want to modify or make some changes to the assignment in order to help them? So again, putting some questions out there, but allowing the teacher to identify those gaps is super important. Identify what the action step is. So as you are moving into that feedback, you're going to want to put a plan into place of how will you tweak this lesson or how will you make changes in order to improve. And that would be your action step. And have the teacher adjust the lesson plan. You're going to want them to take ownership of how they're going to be making changes. It's not going to be leader driven. You're going to want the teacher to be the one to really take ownership of it and make the changes that they feel are going to be best while collaborating with you. And then provide opportunities for the teacher to practice the lesson in front of a coach or a leader to sometimes just work out the bugs. And again, providing them support and feedback in a non-judgmental way is going to be crucial for that, because teachers often feel they're taking a risk. They, might get very nervous about teaching something in front of a leader or an evaluator. So provide that opportunity for them to practice and feel good that you are support. So what are some teacher action steps that can be taken? Consider having your teachers set their own goals and action plans to reach them. You're going to want, again, them to take some action on their behalf that they are taking ownership of. You're going to have teachers develop their own monitoring systems and track progress. That might be something to consider, that you could be doing it quarterly, where instead encourage them to seek out others for solutions, also provide them support, but have them take ownership instead of this is what you have to do. You really want to get teachers thinking about how to improve their classrooms. And when they start doing that, they can implement it certainly, and you'll see growth. And then help direct them through strengths and weaknesses. And so sometimes it's hard for people to hear what their weaknesses are. And so by providing them support and saying, you know what, let's work together to figure out how this can be better, is a way in which you're supporting them and moving them towards a better goal. And tips how to communicate the feedback. Sometimes having those crucial conversations can be very difficult. And depending upon how the teacher will receive your feedback, you'll want to prepare and think ahead about what you might want to say, and also how you might want to provide an openness in the conversation so that they are not feeling on edge or judged. Because really what you're looking to do is provide them the opportunity to grow and make changes. And if they feel that you believe this is something that can be done and is not judgmental, they're going to be more willing to take risks. So when you're having a coaching conversation, here are some things that you might want to consider talking about. Ask the teacher, what do you think went well? What do you think didn't go so well? Being able to have conversation about that puts it on the table. And you can also ask them, do you think this was effective? For some students, it may be an effective way that they were teaching, and for others, it may not be as effective. And so having some of those conversations where you can talk with them about what are some different techniques that you might want to use that would be more impactful, brainstorming with them can be certainly helpful. And then what feedback would you have given to that coach about communication? You want to make sure that communicating, the teacher is communicating with students, that it is specific, and that students understand what the directions are and how they also will take ownership of their learning. When having conversations with teachers, here are some things that you might also want to consider. Make sure that you're listening. Conversations with teachers about feedback and how things went in the classroom can sometimes turn very negative. And so someone might come into a conversation where they want to vent, but always try to turn the conversation around to be a positive action step. If someone is venting and being very negative, try to find a way in which you can interject and say, you know, I know that this is something that seems to really bother you, but let's think about what's positive and move in that. When it comes to questioning, make sure that your questions are open-ended and that you support the teacher's reflection. Okay, looks like I have a couple of questions here. Yes, the recording is available. And it looks like maybe we're having some folks having some difficulty with the connection. This will be available, just so you know, and we can send it out to you. Oops. Sorry here. Okay. Okay. So that is it for today. I know that it's Thanksgiving week, and thank you all so much for coming today. To anyone who's here for the webinar, we really appreciate all of your assistance. If you need or interested in some of our tremendous professional development or instructional coaching, we'd love to be able to help you. And there is my name, Susan Breton, at inspiredinstruction.com. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.